paradrama tales. I sat inside holding my 9-month-old son in one arm, watching through the window as the rest of the family laughed around. The BBQ plates clinked. Voices carried. My daughter pressed her face to the glass, watching her cousins chase each other on the lawn. No one waved. No one said, "Come join us." And I couldn't, because outside, the dog was off leash. The same dog they warned me about before I even walked through the door. "He doesn't do well around babies," they said. "He gets jealous." So they brought him anyway. And when I arrived with my infant and toddler, instead of reconsidering, they told me, "We'll stay outside." Since you've got the baby, it was clear. The choice had been made. The family would eat outside. The dog would roam free. And I, with my children, would stay inside. Alone, like a guest who didn't quite belong. My husband checked in now and then, offering me a quick bite or an update like I was watching a party from the sidelines. But no one said, "We'll put the dog away." No one said, "Come outside, you're part of this." They didn't have to say it, because I already knew. They chose the dog over me, over their grandchildren. And in that moment, as the sun poured in and louder echoed, I'd never felt so quietly unwelcome in my own family. It started like most family gatherings do, with a group text and a touch of obligation. Easter lunch at our place this year. BBQ in the backyard if the weather holds. Nothing fancy, just the usual. Hope to see everyone. My mother-in-law sent it out a couple weeks before. Casual, cheery, no pressure. But of course, it was understood that we'd come. You don't skip Easter lunch. Not without raising eyebrows. And honestly, I was looking forward to it. After months of sleepless nights with the baby, school runs for our toddler, and the relentless cycle of laundry and diapers and everything in between, the idea of sitting outside in the spring sun with family sounded almost like a vacation. I packed little Easter outfits for the kids, tiny pastel dresses and a fresh one easy for the baby. My husband picked up a bottle of wine. I prepped snacks just in case the kids didn't eat BQ. I even bought a chocolate bunny for the nieces and nephews. Trying to be thoughtful, trying to show up. Because that's what you do for family, right? You show up. The morning of, I was tired. As always excited, but the sky was clear. The kids were in decent moods. We loaded up the car and set off, hoping for a day of warmth, both from the weather and the people. We pulled into the driveway, and as I unbuckled the baby, my brother-in-law came up to greet us. He smiled, then casually added, "Just so you know, my wife's bringing the dog, the husky. He's not great with babies, gets kinda jealous." Just a heads up, I froze for a second. Why would they bring him? He knew we'd be bringing our son, a 9-month-old baby. A crawling, cooing, unpredictable little human who couldn't defend himself from a large animal, especially one with jealousy issues. I glanced at my husband, who gave me that quiet look, the one that says, "Please don't start something." So I nodded. Said something vague like, "Okay, we'll just keep our distance." Inside, though, I was already doing the mental math, planning which corners of the house I could retreat to, how I'd juggle both kids, whether I'd even get to eat at all. But I held it in. We walked inside, greeted everyone, set down the diaper bag, got settled. I thought, maybe she won't actually bring the dog. Maybe someone will change their mind. Maybe someone will think of the baby. Then the front door opened. She stepped in, my sister-in-law, holding the husky by the leash. He pulled her forward, tongue out, tail high, excited and totally unaware of the tension he was bringing. She spotted me instantly, baby in arms, and without missing a beat said, "Oh, I see you have the baby. I'll just head straight out back. He's not good around little ones." And just like that, the decision was made. Not by discussion, not by compromise, but by quiet, casual declaration. "You have the baby, so I'll stay outside," meaning you stay inside. This space isn't for you anymore. No one argued. No one said, "Maybe the dog should stay leashed." No one said, "Let's figure something out, bot." And so I stayed inside, holding my baby, watching everyone else walk past me to the yard, where the sun was shining and the grill was warming up and the laughter had already begun. It was Easter Sunday, a day for family, for inclusion, for love. But before we even sat down to eat, I already knew this wasn't going to feel like home. It was said like a joke, like a warning that was meant to absolve, not prevent. "Just so you know, the dog doesn't do well with babies." A sentence that sounds responsible, until you realize it's being said after the plan is already in motion. The dog is already coming, the decision is already made, and now the responsibility shifts silently onto me. I was the one holding the baby. After all, I was the one who had to make adjustments. I should just keep my distance. I should be careful. I should understand it's just how he is. But here's the thing no one seems to understand. I don't blame the dog. I blame the people who keep choosing it over the safety and inclusion of a child. Because when you know an animal has a problem, and you still bring it around kids, especially babies, what you're really saying is, this dog's comfort matters more than yours. And when that dog is let off the leash, what you're saying is, we'd rather you stay away than ask anything different of ourselves. Let me be clear. I'm not anti-dog. I love dogs, but dogs don't come before babies. And when my brother-in-law casually leaned in and whispered that warning, he wasn't protecting us. He was protecting himself from feeling guilty later. It's easier to say, well, we told you, than it is to say, we made the wrong call. Then there was my sister-in-law's remark, cheerful, unapologetic, as she dragged the husky in behind her. I see you've got the baby. I'll just head straight outside. She said it like it was a favor, like she was the one compromising. But all I heard was, your presence is now a problem, and I don't want to deal with it. I stood there, rocking my son against my shoulder, wondering how we got here, how a gathering meant to bring family together had turned into a silent negotiation, one that I hadn't been invited to join. No one asked if I was comfortable. No one asked if my toddler, who loves being outside, would be okay watching from the window. No one said, let's put the dog in the garage for an hour while we eat. Because they'd already whispered their warnings. And that was enough for them to feel justified. But let me tell you something about warnings. When the people giving them are the same people creating the danger, they're not really warnings. They're excuses. And as I stood in the hallway, watching her open the back door and unleash her dog into the yard where lunch would soon be served, I realized something. They weren't choosing the dog because it mattered more. They were choosing the dog because it was easier. Easier than having an honest conversation. Easier than asking someone in the family make a different decision. Easier than saying, we messed up. Let's fix it. And it left me and my kids on the inside looking out, all because no one wanted to say, this isn't okay. And no one wanted to be the one to put the dog away. She said it with a smile, like it was a courtesy, a thoughtful gesture. Oh, I see you have the baby. I'll stay outside. He's not good with little ones. I nodded. What else could I do? I stood in the entryway, holding my 9-month-old against my chest, my toddler clinging to my leg, and offered the only thing I had left in that moment: silence. What I wanted to say was, then why bring him? Why put me in this position? Why are we acting like this is normal? But she was already walking away, her dog's nails clicking against the tile, tail wagging as he bolted toward the open back door. In a flash, he was outside. Unleashed responsibility, unleashed assumptions. And just like that, I knew exactly where I stood, inside. Not by my choosing, but by silent consensus. They'd made room for the dog, but not for us. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching the back door swing shut behind her, watching as my husband followed with drinks in hand, nodding and laughing along with his brother. No one turned back to check if we were okay. No one asked if the baby needed to sit. No one thought to say, let me put the dog away so you can come out too. No, it was already settled. She would stay outside, not for my comfort, but to keep the dog where he wanted to be. And by default, I would stay in, with both children, in the quiet house that wasn't mine. My daughter looked up at me. Mummy, are we going outside too? I swallowed. No, sweetie, I said, brushing a curl from her cheek. Not right now. She didn't ask why. She just nodded and went back to her coloring book, too young to understand the message being delivered loud and clear. Some of us get space. Some of us get sidelined. I tried to make the best of it. I laid out snacks for the kids, changed the baby, pretended the silence of the house was peaceful, not isolating. But every time I walked past the window, I caught glimpses of what we were missing: plates being passed, kids running through the grass, conversations rising and falling like waves on a beach. My husband came in once to ask if I wanted a drink. I said no. He didn't ask again. Later, he brought in a plate of food for me, lukewarm and a little rushed. He kissed the baby's head, squeezed my shoulder, and whispered, sorry, I just didn't want to make a thing out of it. And I got it. I did. No one wanted to make a thing out of it, so instead they made nothing at all. No compromise. No inclusion. No, let's make this work so everyone feels welcome. Just avoidance, just comfort, just going along with what was easiest. Even if it meant quietly choosing who got to belong. And somehow I became the one who had to adjust. Again, because I had the baby, because I had kids, and they had a dog, and a patio, and a plan that didn't include us. So she stayed outside, and I stayed in, and no one said the words out loud, but the message had already been delivered like an RSVP that never required my response. We've chosen where the party happens, and it's not where you are. The grill smoked steadily, the clink of cutlery against paper plates, the pop of soda cans, the rising rhythm of chairs scraping concrete. I could hear it all through the closed back door. It was lunchtime, and I was at the window, holding the baby on one hip, gently bouncing in rhythm to keep him calm. My daughter sat cross-legged beside me, eating crackers from a snack cup I'd packed that morning, just in case. Through the glass, the scene unfolded like a perfect family photo. My mother-in-law flipping burgers, my sister-in-law laughing with her husband, the cousins chasing each other across the lawn, my husband, my partner, walking from the grill to a lawn chair, plate in hand, beer in the other. The dog trotted freely between legs and tables, sniffing around, tail wagging. Off leash as promised. No one looked toward the window. No one noticed the pair of small eyes pressed to the glass, or the tired woman standing behind them, watching the celebration like a child with her nose against a bakery window. I wasn't angry yet, not really. What I felt was something quieter, deeper, like falling asleep in a room full of people talking, and realizing no one noticed you went quiet. No one had come in to say, "We made a spot for you." No one had said, "Let's take turns holding the dog so you can come outside for a bit." No one had asked, "She okay in there?" Because to them, this wasn't exclusion, this was logistics. They'd made room for lawn chairs, for drinks, for the dog, but somehow not for the woman who brought life into this family, twice, and who now stood in the kitchen, holding that life in her arms, trying to pretend she wasn't hurt. It wasn't personal, I'm sure they'd say. It's not like they told me I couldn't come outside. They didn't have to. The dog was message enough. So I watched. I watched as my husband laughed at something someone said. I watched my mother-in-law hand out plates like communion, one by one. I watched as my daughter, eventually tired of waiting, asked softly, "Can we go home now?" And I didn't have an answer. Because what do you say when you've been left out without being told you weren't invited? What do you tell your child when inclusion isn't denied, just quietly withheld? I looked back out the window and caught a glimpse of my reflection. Tired eyes, baby on hip, soft stains on the shoulder of my shirt. I didn't look like someone difficult. I didn't look like someone dramatic. I looked like a mother. One who had shown up, one who had packed the diaper bag and the snacks and the sunscreen and the spare outfit and the wipes. One who had tried. And now one who was forgotten. It's a particular kind of loneliness. Standing inside the house, watching your family share a meal you helped plan but were never truly meant to join. It was Easter, a day for resurrection, for grace, for shared bread and laughter. Instead, I stood at a window, between glass and distance, and learned that sometimes being a mother means watching everyone else eat first, and not because you're selfless, but because no one thought to make you a plate. At some point, the sounds of laughter stopped feeling like background noise and started feeling like a wall. A wall I hadn't noticed being built, brick by brick, until I realized I was standing on the other side of it. Everyone ate, and we didn't. It wasn't a protest. I wasn't boycotting the backyard. I wasn't sulking or making a scene. I was just waiting. Waiting for someone to knock on the door and say, "Hey, we brought you a plate." Waiting for someone to call through the glass, "Come out. It's okay, we'll keep the dog leashed for a bit." Waiting for anyone to say, "See you, we didn't forget you." But no one did. My daughter sat on the floor, nibbling crackers and apple slices from her snack bag. My baby finally drifted off in my arms, his tiny chest rising and falling against mine, and still the door stayed closed. There was no invitation. There was no space made for us. The longer I waited, the clearer it became. They weren't just eating without me. They weren't thinking about me. And that's what hurt most. Not the dog, not the chairs, not the sunshine I couldn't step into. It was the fact that I didn't cross anyone's mind enough to make them pause and wonder, shouldn't she be out here too? Even my husband, the one person I expected to notice, never stopped long enough to shift the dynamic. He checked in once or twice, offered a quick plate or a drink, but he didn't stay. He didn't insist. He didn't challenge the setup. He just adapted to it, like everyone else. Maybe he thought he was keeping the peace. But peace doesn't mean much when it costs someone their place at the table. At one point, I walked to the sink and poured a glass of water just for something to do. As I stood there, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. My daughter behind me, still waiting, still watching. In a hitmare, I wasn't just excluded. I was erased, not with confrontation, just with neglect. Polite, well-dressed neglect. I heard the screen door creak open again, louder rising as someone told a story. More drinks, more food, more them. And less of me. The kitchen, once buzzing with prep and motion, was now still. No one came in to wash hands, grab napkins, refill drinks. Because everything and everyone was already outside. The celebration was happening, and we weren't part of it. There was no confrontation, no blow-up, no slammed doors or raised voices. There was just silence, and when the world is noisy outside the window, silence feels like punishment. Eventually, my daughter asked again, "Can we go home now?" I nodded, because what was I really waiting for? I'd been hoping for something small, a gesture, a moment of thoughtfulness, but none came. Not because they meant harm, but because they didn't care enough to make space. So I packed the snack containers back into the diaper bag, shifted the sleeping baby to my other shoulder, took one last look through the window. Everyone was still eating, still laughing, still choosing comfort over inclusion. And I, the woman who packed, prepared, and showed up, had never even been seated. He came inside twice. The first time, he brought me a plate. A flimsy paper plate with one sausage, a spoonful of salad, and a dry hamburger bun that had probably been sitting in the sun for too long. He handed it to me with a tired half smile, like it was a peace offering. I took it, said thank you, but I didn't eat. Not because I was angry, not yet, but because that plate was never the point. It was never about the food. It was about the fact that he was out there laughing, mingling, sipping beer. While I stood alone, bouncing a baby on my hip, trying to keep our toddler occupied with nothing but crackers and crayons, and I waited for him to say something, to notice the distance, to ask if I was okay, to offer, "Let me put the dog away for a bit so you and the kids can come outside." But he didn't, he said. "Just checking in. Everything all right?" I nodded, because what else was I supposed to do? Start a scene in front of the kids during Easter lunch. So he kissed our son on the forehead and went back outside, back to where the day was happening. He didn't see it as leaving, but I did. The second time he came in, it was later, maybe an hour after lunch had started. The baby had finally fallen asleep, and I was sitting on the couch, my daughter curled up next to me, half asleep herself. He poked his head in like someone checking on a neighbor. "You good?" he asked. I looked up, and I didn't know how to answer. Because what does good even mean in that moment? Did he want the truth? That I felt invisible? That I felt like he should have said something? Anything? To stand with me, beside me, near me. That I didn't need him to fight with his family, but I didn't need him to notice I wasn't just inside with the baby. I was excluded. Instead, I just said, "We're fine." And he said, "Okay, I'll be back in a bit." Then he left again. And I watched him go. Not angrily, not dramatically, just quietly, because I realized something then. It's one thing to be forgotten by in-laws. It's another to be forgotten by the person who promised to never leave you alone in a room full of people. I wasn't expecting him to raise his voice. I wasn't expecting him to start a fight or flip a table. But I was hoping, deeply, desperately, that he would notice what I couldn't say out loud. That I felt like I didn't matter that day. That I'd shown up for a family that didn't show up for me. And that he, of all people, could have done something. Instead, he did what so many people do in moments like these. He chose comfort. He chose quiet. He chose to keep the peace out there, even if it cost peace in here. And the worst part, he probably thought he was doing the right thing. He probably thought I'd understand, and I do. That's the problem. I understand too well. I understand that sometimes the person standing next to you in a family photo can be the one who forgets to hold your place at the table. And I understand that silence, especially from the one you trust most, can echo louder than any argument. That night, I didn't bring it up. I fed the kids, packed up our things, drove home in silence. And as he sat next to me in the passenger seat, scrolling through photos from the day, I stared out the window and thought he checked in. But he didn't stay. Long after we got home, after the kids were asleep and the dishes were done and my husband was quietly scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened, I sat at the kitchen table and stared into the silence. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about the dog. It wasn't just about Easter lunch. It wasn't even just about being left inside while everyone else laughed under the sun. It was a pattern. A slow, subtle erosion of belonging, a dozen little things, spaced far enough apart that they never seemed worth confronting on their own. But when I looked at them all together, they told a different story, like the time they took family photos at Christmas, big, smiling, posed shots by the tree, and somehow I wasn't in a single one. "Oh, you were in the kitchen with the baby," they said. We didn't want to interrupt. Or the time they planned a weekend getaway, and I only found out through a cousin's Instagram post. When I asked, my mother-in-law blinked and said, "Oh, we just figured it'd be hard for you with the kids." Or the baby shower for my sister-in-law, beautifully decorated, catered, full of family, where I spent most of the time helping in the kitchen because no one asked me to sit and celebrate. And every time I told myself they didn't mean it. They just didn't think. It's not worth making a fuss. But that's the problem, isn't it? When you become someone people don't think about, when your presence or absence no longer shifts the dynamic, when your comfort, your participation, your voice slowly stop mattering, because you're the mom, the helper, the one with the baby, the one who always says, It's fine. And the more you say it's fine, the more people believe you. The more they build around your silence. Until one day you're standing in a kitchen with your sleeping baby and you realize no one is expecting you to come outside. They've stopped planning around you. They've started planning without you. It's not the dog. It's that they didn't think twice about putting the dog, a known risk, at the center of the day. And when that choice forced me to retreat, no one tried to bring me back in, because this is how it's always been. Not loudly. Just quietly, casually, repeatedly. And maybe it started out as unintentional. Maybe it was really just oversight, exhaustion, assumption. But after a while, being left out isn't an accident. It's a habit. And the more I looked at the past 2 years, since becoming a mother of 2, the more I saw the pattern forming like cracks under paint. I had become the afterthought, and it didn't matter how much I prepared, how early I showed up, how many diapers I packed, or how quietly I cleaned up. I was the background. I was the one behind the camera, the one in the kitchen, the one on the couch, always inside. So no, it wasn't about the dog. It was about the fact that I never expected them to choose me. And worsey, I think they knew I wouldn't ask them to. Children notice everything, even when they don't understand it yet. Even when they don't have the words to explain what they feel it anyway. They notice who gets hugged first, who gets ignored, who gets left behind. And I knew, sitting in that quiet living room with my daughter curled beside me and my baby sleeping in my arms, that something was shifting in her. Not loudly, but deeply. When she asked, "Can we go home now?" she had just bored. She wasn't just tired, she had sensed it. She had seen the way the door never opened for us. The way no one came inside. The way plates and ladder passed around without ever landing in her mother's hands. She didn't ask why we weren't out there, because she already knew. And that breaks me more than anything, because I try so hard to protect her from that kind of hurt. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't show up in bruises but lingers in questions like, why didn't they want us there? Did we do something wrong? Why did Daddy go outside but Mommy stayed in? I don't want her to grow up thinking it's normal for people to act like that. I don't want her to believe that silence means safety, or that acceptance is something you quietly wait for at the edge of the room. But what am I teaching her, really, if I keep smiling and swallowing these moments? What does it tell her when she sees me left out and I pretend it doesn't matter? What does it say when the world makes room for everyone else and I simply adjust to the corners I'm given? She is watching. She is always watching. And while she may not understand the politics of in-laws or the weight of a dog off leash or the complexity of family dynamics, she does understand something very basic, that Mommy wasn't invited, that Mommy didn't eat, that Mommy stayed inside while everyone else went outside. She will remember that, maybe not in detail, maybe not with perfect clarity, but in some small shaping way. That image will live in her, of the mother who never raised her voice, who never complained, but who slowly disappeared from the center of the room. And what scares me is how easy it would be for her to grow up thinking that's what being a woman is. That being good means being quiet. That being included means never asking to be seen. That love means adjusting endlessly without being asked how it feels. No, that can't be the lesson. Not for her, not for my son. I want them to see love as something that includes, not excludes. I want them to know that you can be kind and still have boundaries, that you can be generous and still deserve space, that you can be soft and still matter. So as I sat there, brushing hair from my daughter's forehead, I made myself a quiet promise. This will be the last time she sees me be silent when I've been pushed out. Next time, if there is a next time, I will speak. I will say, no, this isn't right. I will say, we deserve to be included. And if they don't make room, we'll make our own table, because my children deserve to grow up watching a mother who doesn't just endure, but one who insists on respect, on space, on being counted. And I will not let them inherit the silence that tried to shape me. That day taught me something I won't forget. Not just about dogs or gatherings or in-laws, but about belonging. Real belonging doesn't ask you to be easy. It doesn't ask you to stay quiet. It doesn't expect you to accept the scraps of connection while others feast freely on comfort. Real family doesn't choose convenience over care. It doesn't choose who gets to be part of the moment based on who makes the least noise, or who comes without needs. That day, I was excluded. Not because I made a scene, not because I asked too much, but because I asked for nothing, and they gave me exactly that. And I've learned now, silence doesn't protect peace. It only protects the systems that made you small in the first place. From this point forward, I won't teach my children to adapt to places that don't make room for them. Or their mother. I will teach them that love includes. That family makes space, even when it's not convenient, and that the moment love becomes conditional on your silence, your flexibility, your ability to not make things hard, it stops being love. So if you've ever sat at the window, if you've ever packed the bag, shown up, and still found yourself on the other side of the glass, know this: you are not the problem. You are not too much. You are enough, and you deserve to be in the picture, not behind it. Have you ever been quietly excluded by the people meant to include you? Left outside the circle, sat alone in the room? Share your story below. You're not alone. Comment for others who need to hear it. And remember, real family doesn't need you to shrink. It just needs you to show up. Let's talk about it, and let's stop calling it nothing. Because sometimes nothing hurts most of all.